Welcome to the Ascent Program, Unit 3, Building Trust. This is Juan Riboldi. Today we're going to talk about how to increase trust in organizations, in relationships, and within ourselves. We're going to look at different models and frameworks on how to establish more effective relationships. Today we're going to learn how to build trust within ourselves, in relationships, and ultimately across the organization. We'll start by introducing a framework to understanding the different levels of trust. Every person, team, and organization is somewhere along a continuum between trust and fear. The more we fear, the less we trust. Every measure of fear reduces our capacity to trust. It turns out that the opposite of trust is not just distrust, but actual fear. When we distrust others, we become suspicious. We protect ourselves with high information, and we use it to gain an advantage. We end up justifying the very thing we want to avoid, being taken advantage by others, and in fact, fear justifies us acting in ways that breed distrust in others. Just the same, we can apply our efforts towards building trust. As we build trust, we find ways to extend confidence to others. By first gaining confidence within ourselves, we need to deliver on what was promised without making excuses. We need to build competence so we are able to achieve consistent results. We need to embrace a cause greater than ourselves, and as we do this, the world opens new opportunities. We're able to trust others and create greater opportunities for ourselves. As you look at the continuum between fear on one end and trust on the other, you may want to ask, where along this trust continuum is your organization? And where is your team? And where are you? And more importantly, in what direction are you heading? Moving to a higher level of trust is not easy, but is definitely worthwhile. Every level of trust exists for a reason. It is important to recognize that every trust level has a very specific purpose, approach, and value set. It is useful to recognize that the primary role of the leader operating in such an environment is congruent with the level of trust of the organization. Within each trust level, there are a set of rules defining acceptable conduct. Breaking such rules, even with good intentions, means violating set expectations. One example of an organization that managed to perform at a high level of trust is a cereal manufacturing plant in Albuquerque, New Mexico. They make breakfast cereal. And in this plant, the workers actually run the organization, and the managers are there to support and facilitate their process. Sounds quite simple, but is not common. When I first arrived at this organization, I was seeking to be interviewed by the plant manager, hoping that he will tell me what exactly was the need. Instead, the plant manager told me that the workers were the ones who had requested my services, and they were the ones that were going to hire me. I was surprised to be interviewed by the manufacturing workers who were very interested to understand my credentials and my experience working in a high-trust environment. I found that they made all the decisions. They hired people, they fired people, they managed their performance, they even administered the rewards, and they made many decisions regarding the production, the quality of the cereal, the quantity of the cereal, and many other innovations about the type of cereals that they were going to produce. I was so concerned about the level of empowerment that these workers had that they asked, so what is the role of the managers if you have to do all this work? They basically told me that the managers were to support their work and to facilitate their working. When I met with the managers, I found that their job was actually quite easy. They were to provide information so they could make the decisions. In this environment, a vision of how to maintain a high level of trust was what held this organization operating as one of the best plants of about 47 plants that this company owned in North America for over a decade. They were top performers in productivity, in quality, in safety, and many other metrics. And they attribute all their success to operating as a high-trust environment. Their model of organization was that of autonomous teams that they were very loosely managed, if at all managed, and the teams themselves made all the decisions. Compare that with many of the other plants that produce cereal throughout North America. Some of the other plants were heavily managed with very strict guidelines of what employees should and should not do, with very specific requirements for what needed to be produced and how it was to be produced. And the standards of safety that were heavily reinforced on regular meetings to people. The assumption was that people were not to be trusted and they were not going to perform at their best. That engendered an environment where few people trusted anybody, especially those in management roles, and ultimately led to many of these plants becoming unionized workforces, where the workers felt that they needed to have representation in order to have a voice. All of us have lived in different organizations that operate at different levels of trust. And all of us can tell that we enjoy the work experience a lot better. We're able to produce at our best, and we produce actually much higher level of services when we are operating in a high level of trust. So we're going to learn today how we can create the conditions for a high trust environment. That starts with learning how to trust ourselves by learning how to make and keep promises. We're going to learn how to establish relationships of trust with others, and ultimately how to extend organizational trust so we empower others systematically through the organization. These three concepts would allow us to bring our organization forward along the trust continuum. As we look at the trust scale, we will recognize distinctive trust levels. On the far left, into fear, we have a punitive level. The purpose is to avoid chaos, and they go about doing that by punishing non-compliance. There's a great value for order, and the role of the leader is primarily that of a disciplinarian. From the punitive level, you can move to the autocratic level. Now, the focus goes from avoiding chaos to maintaining order. There's a higher level of confidence, and the approach is to allocate resources. The value system enforces loyalty, and the role of the leader is that of a power broker. Moving from an autocratic, we can go into a paternalistic environment that is focused on security, administering results and guidance, and the role of the leader is that of a benevolent father or mother. And then moving on, we go into an advisory role. The purpose here is to give guidance. The approach is by sharing information. This approach values effective decision making, and the role of the leader is that of an advisor, trying to make decisions based on input from others. And yet, one step higher, we're in a participatory level. At this point, the focus is on building commitment through cooperative decision making. The value is here the integration of various different views, and the role of the leader is that of a facilitator. We've heard them often referred to as a coach or a team leader. And moving one more level up, we go into a partnership role. A true partnership, the purpose is to support growth. They do that by integrating learning, bringing the best creativity, and the role of the leader is that of a colleague or even a friend. What is the trust level of your team and your organization at the current time? Now, many people would say that trust is something soft, intangible, hard to measure, therefore is almost impossible to manage. At the same time, we know that trust makes sense. Trust matters and even pays off in tangible ways. So, Stephen M.R. Covey, on his book, The Speed of Trust, points out that when trust is high, speed of execution goes up, and the transaction cost of getting things done goes down. Trust makes good financial sense. Successful people and organizations find ways to invest in and operate with higher levels of trust, both internally and externally. To build and enhance trust, we need a practical approach. We need to differentiate the various myths about trust from the actual realities, to turn trust into something tangible and manageable that has economic sense. For example, we can start looking at trust as something that is quantifiable and manageable as an asset. We need to recognize that trust is built on character, but is also built on competence. Both can be learned and developed. Trust is a dynamic variable that is constantly being built or decreased by our actions. Not trusting others is often the greater risk. Trusting too much when evidence is the opposite to doing that could be very risky. So the important thing is to extend smart trust, sound trust, to people that are trustworthy. As we adopt this mindset about trust, the first thing would be to ask ourselves, how trustworthy am I? And we will define self-trust as a combination of 4 different things: integrity, intent, capabilities, and results. Integrity means making and keeping commitments. We need to be willing to commit in the first place, but we also need to be willing to keep the commitments that we made. Second, intent. Stand for something bigger than yourself. Creating a personal mission statement that describes what you want to be known for will help us stand for something greater than ourselves. When our intent is self-focused and self-serving, we cannot expect others to trust us. Third is capability. We need to master what we do. We need to strive to become excellence in what we do, carefully setting goals and analyzing our performance relative to those goals, making continuous improvement and holding ourselves accountable for excellence in all that we do. And last but not least is results, the ability to deliver on promises. We need to do what we said we will do, deliver it as promised, and if we can't, as it usually happens, we need to have the humility to admit when we are falling short of what was promised, and then work towards doing our best to fulfill the promises. These 4 steps to building trust are the key to becoming trustworthy, becoming a person of honesty and integrity. Now, building trust in relationships requires consistent behavior. As we become reliable, others can learn to depend on us. We are starting to build, if you were to consider it as a trust bank account. If we do things that seem suspicious, covert, or outright misleading, we withdraw from the trust account. Imagine that we are, through our actions, making deposits or withdrawals in a trust account. Think about your current trust account in specific relationships. Do you have a very strong positive balance? Are you trading near to the break-even point? Or are you overdrawn? People have given you plenty of loans that you are not able to pay back. If you find yourself in a situation that you want to build a greater trust account balance, there are 10 steps that you can take to build both character deposits as well as competence deposits. On the character deposit side, you tell the truth, be respectful, treat others right, admit your faults and forgive others, and show loyalty. To make competence deposits, you do a quality work, clarify expectations, deliver as planned, be punctual, and take responsibility for your actions. With this in mind, you can think of situations where trust needs to be restored in a relationship. As you consider your actions over the last few months, you can describe the impact that they have had in recent interactions with this person, and which actions have been withdrawals or deposits. Taking stock of your current trust account balance will help you realize what are the next steps, both to build trust as character deposits or competence deposits. After building trust in relationships, you need to also discern how smart it is to extend trust to others based on their trustworthiness. Extending trust can bring great dividends. It can also create the possibility of significant risk. extending sound trust requires good judgment, taking calculated risks that are both appropriate and verifiable. And looking at ways to extend sound trust to others, we have identified 4 potential zones of judgment. Zone 1, we refer to the area of sound judgment. This is the zone of appropriate trust. In the zone of sound judgment, we make decisions using both analysis and intuition. We take adequate risks based on the track record and evidence of success of the person. Zone 2 is the zone of being overly credulous. This is the zone of blind trust. In this zone, we act gullible and likely to fall prey of scams and deceit. There is a naive willingness to trust without sufficient analysis and judgment. Zone 3 is a zone of being overly suspicious. This is a distrust zone. Those who really extend trust beyond themselves limit opportunity. And last is Zone 4, when we are overly protected. This is the no-trust zone of indecision. In the overprotective zone, those who don't trust others end up not even trusting themselves. We become immobilized by insecurity and protectiveness. In an effort to eliminate risks, they reduce the value and growth potential. Zone 2, being over-credulous, is definitely high risk and leaves a person overly exposed. People might think Zone 4, being overprotective, is lower risk, but delivers poor results. Zone 3, being overly suspicious, in that zone we miss opportunities and limit the contributions from others. The best risk and return occurs in Zone 1, the zone of sound judgment, where risks are wisely assessed and trust is wisely extended to others. I hope that you can find these 3 powerful tools useful in our lives on taking stock on how trustworthy we are, how we can build trust by understanding our current trust account and making both character and competence deposits, and ultimately how to extend sound trust to others by analyzing which zone are we appropriately operating under. Hope you have enjoyed this class and have a great day.